Deep in the currents of a forgotten sea, a heavy copper jar lay buried in the sand for 1,000 years. When a poor fisherman finally hauled it to the shore, he believed he was saved from starvation. He did not know he had just unsealed his own executioner. Welcome back to Nightfall Tales. Every night, an old story waits to be told. Tonight, we step back into the dark chambers of the Arabian Nights. Scheherazade has bought herself another sunrise, and to keep the king listening, she begins the tale of a patient man, a terrifying beast of smoke, and the narrow gap between mercy and survival. Dim the lights, put your headphones on, and let the night carry the story. Long ago, by the shores of a vast and ancient sea, there lived a fisherman. He was not a man of wealth, nor did he seek it. He was simple, patient, and deeply devout. Every morning, long before the sun had even thought of breaking the dark horizon, he would leave his quiet home, carrying nothing but a worn, hand-woven net. He had a family to feed, a wife and 3 young children who relied on whatever the sea decided to give him. But the fisherman lived by a strict, sacred rule. He would cast his net into the waters only 4 times a day. No matter how empty his hands remained, no matter how bitter his hunger, he would never cast it a 5th. It was his pact with Providence, a boundary he refused to cross. On one cold, mist-covered morning, the fisherman stood upon the rocky shore, his stomach hollow with hunger. The day before had yielded nothing, and his children had gone to bed in absolute silence. Desperate but patient, he stepped to the water's edge, whispered a prayer, and cast his net for the first time. The net sank into the black depths. When he pulled it back, straining against the weight, his heart leaped with hope, only to fall when the mesh emerged filled with nothing but heavy mud and sharp, broken pieces of old pottery. He cleaned the net, stepped further down the coast, and cast a second time. This time the net brought up sharp stones and old, polished animal bones. The third cast was no better, returning only tangled seaweeds and rotting wood that tore the delicate threads of his net. Now only one cast remained. The fisherman sat upon a cold rock, looking out at the endless grey waves. His hands were raw, his net was damaged, and the sun was beginning to rise, casting long, pale shadows across the beach. If this final cast failed, his family would starve for another day. He stood, gathered the wet netting, breathed a final prayer, and hurled it far into the deep water. As it settled, he began to pull. The resistance was immense. It was so heavy that he had to tie the rope around a stone anchor and wade into the surf to lift it. But when the net finally broke the surface, there were no fish. Instead, tangled in the weeds was a heavy copper jar. It was stoppered with lead, and upon that lead was stamped a deep, ancient seal, the seal of Solomon, the legendary king of wisdom. The fisherman laid the heavy jar on the sand. It was dark, cold to the touch, and seemed to hum with a strange, sleeping energy. He took his knife, pried off the ancient lid stopper, and peered inside. The jar was empty. Disappointed, he turned the jar upside down and shook it, hoping for gold or jewels. Nothing came out. But then a thin wisp of dark, oily smoke began to drift from the opening. The smoke grew thicker, pouring out in great heavy waves, rising high into the morning sky. The fisherman took a step back, his breath catching in his throat. The smoke expanded, blocking out the sun, turning the bright morning back into pitch-black night. It gathered, swirled, and began to condense into a towering, terrifying figure. An ifrit, a giant Jinni of raw smoke and burning embers, its head reaching the clouds, its eyes glowing like red lanterns in the dark. The giant looked down at the tiny fisherman, its voice shaking the earth like thunder. "Be glad, fisherman," the ifrit roared. "Be glad, for you are about to die. But because you have set me free, I will grant you one small mercy. You may choose the manner of your execution." The fisherman, trembling in terror, could barely speak. "Why?" he cried. "I have just rescued you from the dark depths. I have freed you from your prison. Is this how you reward the one who saved you?" The Ifrit laughed, a sound like grinding stones. "Let me tell you of my vow," the giant replied. "For the first 100 years in that jar, I swore that whoever freed me, I would make them rich beyond their wildest dreams, but no one came. For the second 100 years, I swore I would open the treasures of the earth to my Saviour. Still, no one came. By the third 100 years, my heart grew black with rage. I swore an absolute oath. Whoever frees me now, I will kill them. I will give them only one choice: how they wish to die. Choose now, fisherman, for my patience is short." Though his limbs shook, the fisherman's mind remained clear. He knew that raw strength could not fight a giant of smoke and fire, but wisdom had always been the weapon of the small. He looked up at the towering beast, feigning disbelief. "If I must die, I will accept it," the fisherman said, his voice steadying. "But before I choose my death, I demand you answer one question." "I cannot die believing a lie," the Ifrit sneered. "Ask quickly." The fisherman pointed to the small copper jar. "You claim you were locked in that tiny vessel, but you are a giant. Your head touches the clouds. Your hands stretch across the shore. It is physically impossible. Even a single one of your fingers could not fit inside. You are lying to terrify me. I do not believe you were ever in that jar." The Ifrit was furious. To have its power doubted by a mere mortal was an insult it could not bear. "You doubt the magic of the ancient kings," the giant bellowed. "Watch, foolish man!" Before the fisherman's eyes, the towering giant began to dissolve back into a thick, swirling cloud of black smoke. The cloud spun, shrinking smaller and smaller, funneling down like a dark whirlpool. Slowly, the smoke slid over the lip of the copper jar, disappearing into the dark interior until the last wisp was gone. The moment the smoke cleared, the fisherman did not hesitate. With lightning speed, he grabbed the heavy lead stopper, slammed it back into the jar's neck, and hammered it down with a heavy stone. The seal of Solomon was restored. The trap had snapped shut. From within the thick copper walls, the Ifrit's voice came muffled, hollow, and desperate. "Let me out," it pleaded, the thunder replaced by fear. "Open the jar, fisherman, and I swear I will make you rich. I will show you the secrets of the earth." But the fisherman stood firm, clutching the jar tightly. "No," he replied, "you are a betrayer. If I let you out, you will destroy me just as you swore. I will take this jar, and I will throw it back into the deepest abyss of the sea. And I will build a stone tower right here on this shore, and I will warn every fisherman who ever comes to this beach never to cast their net in these waters, for a murderous devil lies waiting in the dark. Your heart is like the heart of King Yunan, who rewarded his greatest saviour with the executioner's blade. Let me tell you of the sage Duban, so you understand why I will never open this jar again." The fisherman sat beside the jar and began the nested tale. Long ago in the city of Persia, there ruled a king named Yunan. He was wealthy and powerful, but he was cursed with a terrible leprosy that no physician in the land could cure. One day, a wise sage named Duban arrived in the city. He did not use bitter potions or sharp knives. Instead, he hollowed out a wooden mallet, filled it with secret healing herbs, and told the king to play a game of polo until his hands sweated and absorbed the medicine. Within days, the king's skin was as clear and healthy as a child's. King Yunan was overjoyed. He showered the sage with gold, robes of honor, and made him his closest adviser. But the king's grand vizier was a man of jealousy and malice. he whispered in the king's ear, warning him that a man who could cure a king with a mere mallet could just as easily kill him with a word. Yunnan, consumed by envy and fear, allowed his mind to be poisoned. He ordered the sage Duban to be executed. The sage wept, begging the king to spare the one who cured him, but Yunnan was blind to reason. Before the blade fell, Duban made one request. "Let me give you my greatest book of wisdom. Read its pages after I'm gone." The sage was executed. That night the king sat alone, opening the heavy leather-bound book. The pages were stuck together, and Yunnan licked his finger to turn the dry parchment. He turned page after page, finding them completely blank. But the sage had coated the edges with a deadly, invisible poison. As the king licked his fingers to turn the blank sheets, the poison entered his veins. Within hours the king lay, dying on his throne, realizing too late that by destroying his saviour he had sealed his own doom. The fisherman finished the tale, the sea breeze blowing cold across the rocks. "You, Ifrit, are no different than King Yunnan," the fisherman whispered. "You sought to destroy the one who cured your ancient prison. Why should I trust you now?" From within the jar, the Ifrit wept, swearing by the name of the Most High that it would never harm the fisherman, and would instead grant him a true fortune that would feed his family for generations. The fisherman stood at the water's edge holding the copper jar. If he threw it back, his family remained hungry, but safe. If he opened it, he gambled their lives on the oath of a monster. He looked down at the lead stopper, his hand resting on the seal. What would you do? The fisherman's choice is a threshold of survival, a gamble made in the cold light of dawn. Which path do you believe he chose? Tell me in the comments below, and subscribe to Nightfall Tales to stay for the next story. Dim the lights, keep the lamp close, and wait for the next tale after nightfall.